Welcome to the American Cafe. I'm your host, David Bird. I'm joined by Jake Shimaburkuro, maestro of the ukulele and a virtuosic player that has been just inducted into the Guitar Player Magazine Hall of Fame. So, we'll be chatting with Jake a little bit about his music, his life, his career, and life on the road. We're here at the Birchmere in Alexandria. First of all, Jake, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much. No, it's a pleasure.
Don't want to
It's
squeeze
an honor.
You started playing the ukulele at age 4, around age 4?
Yeah, I got into it because my mom played, and I was born and raised in Hawaii, and that's something all the kids do. Actually, I think in elementary school, we all learn how to play the instrument. So it's a very, very common instrument. It's a big part of the culture there.
Now, you mentioned that, and we'll get to that a little bit later. I want to talk to you about how important it is for kids to have music education. But from there, you kind of really dove into the instrument after your mom and dad split up, right? Am I getting that right as far as the timeline, that when your parents divorced, you kind of went towards a deeper kind of haven in the instrument? Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, the ukulele was always kind of my passion and something I always loved. But I think, especially anytime I was faced with a very, placed in a difficult situation, or I was uncomfortable with something, or just struggling, through anything. Music was the one thing that I always felt I could depend on to kind of help get me through those things. And of course family and friends too, but music was the one thing. Like, whenever I wanted to be alone, and I was the type of person that would just hold everything in. I never liked talking about my problems, or never liked really putting that on anyone else, and I was the type of person that I always kind of held things in. And but music was my way of kind of just letting those emotions out. It was kind of like some people talk to other people to kind of resolve things or to feel better. But for me, it was like picking up the ukulele and playing, and I could just feel those emotions just kind of escaping, through my instrument, and it really helped me through some of the most difficult, times in my life.
Now let's fast forward to about 10 or 11 years ago. You're in New York City, and you get asked to play on a show called Late Night Ukulele Disco.
Yeah.
Only in New York is there a television show called Late Night Ukulele Disco, maybe in Oahu.
Yeah.
But you played a version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps. You had taken it, now going back in your career, you had been with a group with your brother and a couple of other players, and then you were with the group Cologne, I believe is how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
But now you're kind of a solo, and you're in New York, and this show asks you, play something for us, and you do a version of While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and from there, all of a sudden, that video hits YouTube. What happens next?
Wow. Yeah. That was amazing. I was just very lucky, in the right place at the right time, because I was always like you mentioned, my first band was a band called Pure Heart, and we played a lot of traditional and contemporary Hawaiian music, and I was always a side band. Even with the band Cologne, I was always a side band. We always had a lead singer, so I would just kind of be on the side, and I would play, and then there might be a little space for like a solo, and I'd kind of step up and play, and then I'd kind of go back, and the singer would kind of take over, so once I was doing some things on my own as well, but when that YouTube video went viral, this was back in 2005. It completely changed, my life. I started touring with other musicians. I remember the first band I went out on the road with after that video went viral was Bela Fleck and the Flecktones. And in my wildest dreams, I listened to their music, and they're phenomenal musicians. For me, Bela was always one of my heroes. Victor Wooten, all those guys, they're just at a whole nother level, And when I had the opportunity to go out with them, I was like, wow, this it was so inspiring, and I just I don't know. I was always passionate and always fired up about music, and But that really gave me, I don't know, I was just so fired up to practice and to, to just keep driving, myself to, learning the instrument, learning more about music. Once I started traveling, and a lot more, just exposed me to all these different experiences that just gave me new ideas, and I met other artists and other musicians.
Bette
Along the
Midler
way.
calls as
Oh yeah.
you get to play for the Queen of England.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was incredible too. The way that happened was it was actually through Jimmy Buffett. I was doing I did a few tours with Jimmy Buffett and Core Reefer Band. That was an incredible experience. And I remember one day we were playing in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand, and I guess Jimmy had lunch with Bette that day because at the time Bette Midler was doing her show in Vegas. Remember, she had her own show, and so I guess Jimmy and Bette, they're friends. They had lunch together, and I remember that day when we had our rehearsal. Jimmy Buffett, when he got to the sound check, he was like, it's like, I just had lunch with Bette Midler, and I was talking to her about you. She may be calling you. And I was like, what? Really? And I don't know exactly how everything happened, but yeah, a few months later, she had called me and told me that she had this performance in England and she wanted to bring me along. And at the time, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be, playing with Bette Midler. I couldn't believe it, because she was one of my heroes and she's my mom's favorite singer, So I was like, oh my goodness, I can't wait to tell my mom. And then I find out that it was a concert for the royal family. It was a concert that the royal family puts on. It's called the Royal Variety Performance, and we got to play together. And then after the show, we both got to meet the Queen and shake her hand, and it was just the most incredible experience.
Now you're touring in support of your latest album, Nashville Sessions, which is all original material, as I
Yes,
understand.
it's my first all original record, and it's always been one of those things. I never really had confidence in my own compositions, in writing, and I think that's why growing up I've always relied on cover tunes, and I like arranging songs for the ukulele, songs that I grew up listening to or songs that I love. Maybe it's the melody that I love, or maybe something lyrical, or maybe it's just I like the chord progression in something, or the rhythm, the feel of something, and I just love that because for me it's kind of my own selfish curiosity. Like if I think of a song like Bohemian Rhapsody, a part of me would be like, I wonder what that would sound like on the ukulele, right? So so then it's this I'm just curious, and then I become obsessed, and I'll just kind of sit there and try to figure it out until I get it. It becomes an obsession. So I love it, But the Nashville Sessions record was the first time that I sat down and I was like, and that's why we did it in Nashville, because Nashville is kind of the home of songwriters. I thought maybe if I go to Nashville, I get to feed off some of that energy, and and I'll be able to write and come up with things, and and we rented the studio out for 6 days, and we were just gonna try to maybe write 2 or 3 songs maybe. And I guess I was being in that environment, I was just so inspired, and I ended up writing like, I don't know, over a dozen songs. I mean, not that they're all good or anything, but I came up with, collectively we came up with about maybe 15 tunes, and it was just a lot of it was collaborating, with Nolan Werner and Evan Hutchings, who were the studio musicians who played, with me, and just jamming and bouncing off ideas, each other, just saying, oh man, here I got this riff thing. Let's try to make something out of this. It's an A minor or something, and I'll just start playing that, and then the drummer would be like, oh cool, and he'll like do something, and the bass player would do something, and we're like, oh yeah, this is good, and then let's try to go here, and then and it's just kind of like this very spontaneous. I mean, we were basically writing the song as we tracked, as we recorded. So it was really great. And there were many times where we'd get like halfway through and it would just fall apart, and we'd be like, okay, let's stop. All right, so what? So then we'd think, okay, what can we do, in this section here, and we just kind of work it out that way, So as we're playing at this, the tunes were just so fresh, and I think the album kind of reflects that. You can kind of tell it's very like we're searching, we're like, oh, and then you can tell when we get excited when we find something cool, and we're like, that was cool, and you can almost in the music you can almost tell that we're like looking at each other and smiling like, oh, yeah, that was great, So I mean, I loved it. I mean, it was such a wonderful experience, for me.
Now, you're also a recent father. I think about 4 years ago, you and your wife had a son.
Yeah, so my oldest son is 5
So you have
now,
more than one now?
and my youngest is 2.
Oh,
So
wow.
2 boys.
So now, how does, and your wife, we should mention, is a medical doctor. She's an OBGYN.
Yes.
And she stays in Hawaii,
She's
and
a very good one, yes.
you guys go out on tour. Now, how do you balance fatherhood, musician, leader of a group, husband, etc.? How does that juggling act work out?
It's hard, Family always comes first, of course. I feel very fortunate that my wife and I both have very supportive parents. Whenever I leave town, my mother-in-law, she flies out from the Big Island and stays at with her grandchildren and my wife, and she basically stays there and helps to get them to school and helps with preparing dinner and watching them and all that. I mean, it's really incredible. It's been a lot easier recently because now they're both in school, right? Preschool and elementary school. So that got that's a little easier now. But man, when we before they were in school, it was a little rough. But it's better now, and things, because of the technology, we have things like FaceTime and Skype. We can see each other. It's not the same as being there, but it makes it a little easier. My mom and both of our families, are just we wouldn't be able to do it without them. If we didn't have that support, one of us would have to, sacrifice our career. And it's so we're just very fortunate, and I think we have a pretty strong, a pretty strong bond where, even if I'm gone for a couple weeks, when I come back, we pick up right where we left off. And I have brought my oldest son with me, like on some shorter runs, and he loves it. He loves the bus, because like for him at home, we always make these forts, right?
Right.
At home, and he likes to be in the forts. But on the bunks, we have, on the bus, we have these bunks, right? These bunk beds.
Right, sure.
And it's like, they're all kind of stacked on each other. So it's like when you're sleeping in there, it's just like you're in this.
Do they have
like
the
a
little
little
curtains?
cave. Yeah, it's got the curtain. So it's
Pull
like
the curtain, it's like,
blackout thing, right?
Oh, I'm here in my fortress.
Yeah, and my son loved it. He just thought it was the coolest thing. And and he's small, so he can sit up in it and do stuff, right? And he loved it. But it was funny because those bunks are not very big, but he at the time he was 4 and he didn't want to sleep in his own bunk, because he was kind of scary for him. So we had to share a bunk, and so 2 of us were like trying to, I'm trying to be comfortable sleeping in this bunk with him.
Son, this is Daddy's bus. Okay?
Yeah.
Speaking about kids, you mentioned that your kids are in preschool and in kindergarten or whatever, and you mentioned earlier that you started playing the ukulele when you were in school.
Yes.
How important do you think music education is for kids? Not only so they can become musicians, but just so they can become whole people.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's very important. It is so crucial, because what I say this all the time, but I really believe that we put a lot of emphasis on our physical health, right? Physical education, PE in school, very important, right? Exercise and all that, but like music and the arts, that's PE for the mind, and I think we have to remember that, it's not just about getting the kids out there and exercising and all that, but you know, they have to you know, they have to exercise their brains, you know. And I think whenever you introduce the arts and music, you know, the creative side, you know, it just, music, especially in, you know, things I've been reading in recent articles, it just stimulates different parts of our brain that we use. We use all the different parts, you know, independently when we're doing things, but with music, we use them all at the same time, and there's like this synergy, you know, this thing that happens that that they don't find, you know, with other activities. So I think there's something really incredible about it, and it's beyond our general understanding right now. So I don't know. I think there's something to it, and you know, and I work with a lot of kids, and we do a lot of activities with music, and just the way it just transforms them, you know. I mean, for example, like even just my two sons at home, you know, they can just be sitting around and just kind of be like, oh, you know, in the morning, but put some music on, you know, and they'll like get up and they'll just start dancing, and their whole mood changes, you know, and they're like dancing around and they're just acting silly. So I don't know. I think there's you know, there's really something about music and the arts, and I think a lot of times we take it for granted.
Now I can't get away without talking about your instrument itself. So why don't you grab that? This is a handmade ukulele from Hawaii, and it's koa.
Made out of koa wood.
And it's a kanaka, is that the way it's pronounced?
Yeah, kamaka.
Kamaka,
Yeah.
okay.
Last year was their centennial year as a family business, building these instruments. And
wow.
Yeah, they're really incredible.
And the notes on the different strings are what? I'm a guitar player, I'm not a uke player, so...
So it's the first string closest to the floor is an A.
Right.
And it drops down to an E, and then a C, and then you have a high G on the top.
Okay.
So they call that re-entrant tuning, right? So your two low strings are in the middle, and your two high strings are on the outside.
Okay, cool. Excellent, excellent. And this is made out of koa, right? Let's see.
Well, the body is made out of koa.
The body's made out of koa?
The neck is mahogany.
Okay.
And the fretboard is ebony.
Now, did you have a hand in designing this instrument, or are you
No,
just like,
I know
you
nothing
guys
about,
are the masters?
Yeah.
And
Yes, exactly. You guys are the masters, you know.
it's kind of like telling Leo Fender, why don't you make it like this?
Yeah.
But people have. Eddie Van Halen surely did. But well, I can't get away. My audience would never forgive me if I didn't have you play something for us.
Oh, sure.
So I'll leave it to dealer's choice.
Okay.
But thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
Jake Shimabukuro is on American Cafe here at the Voice of America. He is touring in support of his album Nashville Sessions, and he has just been inducted into the Guitar Player Magazine Hall of Fame. That's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah.
There's
and you know what's really cool about it is Jerry Douglas was also, you know, inducted, and I have a new album coming out next year, and we both played together on this next record. So.
Now, I wanted to ask you about that, too, because I noticed on a couple of the dates on the tour, you're playing with George Benson in one date, and Tommy Emmanuel with another. So that's a couple of really top names. Does that ever get intimidating when somebody
all the
sits
time.
down?
Yeah, of course, man. I get intimidated all the time, you know, playing with other musicians, and you know, but it's always you know, it's always just a great learning experience, you know. You know, I always feel like every opportunity, you know, that's the way to grow, you know, as a musician. And I kind of take that approach like tennis players, right? You know, the only way you're going to become a better tennis player is you got to play with better tennis players.
Right.
You know, you have to play with players that are better than you, that have more experience than you, that, you know, and that's the only way you're going to improve your game. It's the same thing with music. You know, you always have to continue to play with musicians, you know, that scare you, you know, that you're like, I don't want to play with this person, you know, it's too scary. But that's the only way you're going to learn and you're going to get better. You know, so I constantly always just try to put myself in those situations where, you know, I'll sit in, you know, with a band, and, you know, most of the time I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what's going on, you know, but I sit there long enough, and, you know, you ask questions, and you're like, oh, so what's happening here? And they, they say, oh, well, we're doing this, and we're just kind of like, oh, okay, I kind of see, oh, that's cool, okay, I get it now, and then and then you're able to kind of play, and you pick up on all these little subtle things that just expand your horizons,
Speaking of expanding horizons, I'm going to step out, and Jake Shimaburkuro, thank you for being with us.
All right.
I appreciate it again, and we'll let you play a little something. I'll get out of here.
Well, here's something familiar.
Okay.
Let's see. It's my interpretation. This is my latest one here. This is, I got to play this one with Jerry Douglas in the studio.